welcome to our matchday Q&A with myself, Sean Mullen.
I'm Joel Marcet.
And we are joined today by another special guest, Sasikumar. Sasi, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Really excited to be here and sharing my story.
Awesome. So thank you for that. Now you are a lot of things. You've done a lot of things. You currently are doing a lot of things. But the thing I want to talk to you about first is you are a former Singapore international footballer, and your name on Twitter is Blade of God. I would love for you to tell us the story behind that name.
It's actually a really long story. I'll try to keep
Go
it short for
Yeah.
viewers here. In 1998, I was playing for the national team. We played in one of the most important competitions in Southeast Asia. Let me put it that way. And I scored the winning goal for Singapore, but it's how I scored the winning goal. I was actually going for a header. I missed the header and the ball hit my shoulder and it went in. So one of the local media journalists basically came up with this moniker called Blade of God. And that kind of stuck with me forever. And I thought, why not? You know, I'm a marketing guy. I'll take anything.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool to be having a name similar to someone like Diego Maradona.
No, not the same level. But people get the idea.
Yeah. No. So yeah, like you mentioned there, it was Singapore's first major international title. I think if that's correct.
That's right. As you know, Singapore is a very young nation, and we've not really achieved a lot in football. But in Southeast Asia, we used to be a powerhouse, and one of the tournaments, which is now called a different name now, but back then it was called the Tiger Cup, which is where all the Southeast Asian nations get together, and it's really our World Cup, to be honest, or European Championship. Maybe European Championship is probably a bit more closer to what that tournament is. And yeah, I mean, I got my opportunity to put my name on the wall and write a bit of history. And I'm so blessed that I had that journey with the national team and, you know, scoring that very important goal, which went down in history.
What was the impact of that goal for both for yourself and for Singapore as a nation?
Yeah, I think, first of all, for Singapore as a nation, it was huge because we've never won anything internationally. That was the first international tournament. We've won a bunch of other stuff, but it was really domestic. So it was really cool for us, that group of players as a collective, to win something for the nation. And it was really a proud moment for all of us, and especially for me, where, if I'm being completely honest, I'm an accidental footballer. Right? I am.
Wow, you don't hear that much.
So I wasn't the most talented when I was young. I was always overlooked, and I really got my career going very late in my teens. And when I did, I climbed to the top really quickly. And then, you know, the culmination of all my hard work and sacrifice and all of that was the goal. So for me personally, it was a big thing. And I think there's a bigger thing here. I always tell people that a lot of the underdogs, a lot of kids, aspiring players, they turn to me and go like, oh, how can I follow this journey? And I keep saying, I said, if I can do it, then so can you, because I really didn't have the talent, but what I really had was the perseverance, and I had the mental strength than most people and most players. And I suppose that kind of set me apart, and I worked really hard at it, and the goal kind of was the nice icing on the cake.
Yeah.
So I'll take it. Yeah.
There you go. Maybe there's still hope for us. You know?
I think
Why not?
also,
Why not?
I mean, Sasikumar has some kind of a physical also.
I do. Yes, agree. Yeah.
Quite a tall, strong.
When we saw you come in, we were like, he's winning that.
He looks the part.
Yeah.
He looks the part. We will make sure to at least include a link to the goal for all of you that haven't watched it, because it's quite awesome to see.
Yeah, I watched it on YouTube, and it was. I mean, I was just impressed that I wasn't expecting that I would be able to find it, but it was no disrespect. I didn't mean that, but I just because I couldn't even find some old Premier League games.
No, this is going back in time, right? No offense there, because I lived through the era where there were no mobile phones.
Exactly.
No dial-up internet, if you remember that one. So we're really going back in time, and well done for finding that link.
So what does it mean to you? What's it like to be remembered for this? Do you still get people sort of coming up to you and sort of asking you about the goal and that kind of thing?
Yeah, mind you, this is 20-something years ago, 25, more than 25 years ago. I'll share a funny story. I was in Vietnam about a month ago, and a friend of mine said, hey, he works with quite a few Vietnamese people, and he mentioned to one of his Vietnamese partners that he's going to meet me.
Yes.
And he asked, oh, is that the footballer?
It was Vietnam you beat in the final.
That's right.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it was a golden generation of Vietnamese players, and the team was really good. The whole country was behind them. So guys who are about 30-ish, they will all remember me because that was their teens, right? And they were all, in school and getting behind Vietnam. So what this guy did was he had a shirt of all the Vietnamese players signed on that shirt, and he framed it up in his office. And he's a very successful businessman now. So what he did was he brought down the poster, ripped it apart, took the shirt just to come and see me to sign it.
Oh, wow.
Someone has actually offered him 30,000 US, and he refused to sell it. So he
Wow.
got me to sign it, and he was telling me this was in a public bar, right? He came in there taking photos, and everyone was looking like, who's this guy? Like, and so talking about being remembered, I think these are the few experiences that. It's 20 something years ago, and I suppose I had an impact on the Vietnamese people because they thought they were going to win this one, and I turned up and ruined their party. So, but it's all great memory, right? At the end of the day, that's what football is made of.
And you're saying like it was a long time ago, but I'm sure that there are people who that was like their biggest best moment in football that will remember that. Like Singapore fans and like you said, you mentioned Vietnamese fans will remember it, maybe not for as happy reasons. But, have you met like sort of any fans who are just who were at the game maybe or who remember watching it on TV?
Yeah, I mean throughout the years I get I get recognized because I'm in the media in Singapore as well.
Yes.
I used to host my own radio show. I was on TV, so I was kind of in and around TV media, so people recognize me from my work before. But yeah, every now and then, not too long ago, we were having dinner back in Singapore before we moved to Spain with my kids, and people recognized me and they said, "Hey, are you Sasikumar?" And they pulled it out on the internet and they showed it on Google. So it was good for my kids to see that I was recognized. I mean, they see me as their dad, their father, the nerd at home, but they know I'm a footballer, but they don't know which level of a footballer I am, and for them to recognize that and see that it's quite nice. I think that means more to me than me, trying to stroke my own ego and say, hey, people know me. I think it's more like when my kids recognize that I was, I made an impact in people's life, or they followed me, or they were my fans, and that makes a difference for me now.
What about this? You said that people recognize you for your work on the pitch as well, but also for your work off the pitch as a radio host, for example. How does this transition happen from a footballer to?
Yeah, so I'm going back to my point where I was an accidental footballer, right? And I always had this thing at the back of my mind that at some point my football career will end, and I didn't really know when. And I had this appetite for doing something else. Even when I was playing, I was always involved in different businesses, and because I knew I had to take care of myself after football. And my dad was always on my case, like, what are you gonna do afterwards? and mind you, I was international player, professional player, earning good money. And even my mom was like, one day, she said, when are you gonna get a job? I was like, Mom, this is my job. Come on. Yeah, come on. So these sort of things happen, right? But that really spurred me on to think about my future. And truth be told, I finished football at 29. I was kind of at my peak, and I said, enough is enough. I got to think about something else. So media was something that I was really excited about. Of course, naturally, a lot of players get into coaching. When I thought about coaching, I coached a lower division team. I coached a women's team. I had my own academy. I didn't like it because as a coach, you got to be 24/7. As a player, it was a different sacrifice, but as a coach, you don't have to only care about yourself. Now you got to care about a squad of 30 players, media, management, and all of that stuff. And you had to live 24/7 for football. I wasn't quite ready for it. I wanted another life, right? So that's how I made the transition. And it was not easy because when you're at the top of your game and you retire from football, you miss being around the players, miss around winning things. I won a lot of trophies during my career. I missed the winning thing. I missed playing for the national team, and I was really depressed. If I'm being completely honest, for 6 months, I was kind of depressed. I, closed myself in, and then I realized, hey, life has to go on, and that's how the transition started. But it wasn't easy. I feel for a lot of players because I know it's not easy, and a lot of players don't recover from those things. A lot do, but I was blessed and lucky that I kind of managed to transition. But it was tough. was tough. I mean, playing football is way much easier than trying to get into the big bad world and try to make a living. And the media as well. I mean, I still remember I used to be on ESPN Star Sports back then, doing the Premier League, and I was given a chance to be a pundit. And my first ever show was a complete disaster. Complete disaster. I went back home, and then I got a call from a mate of mine. He said, mate, no, don't worry about this, because Gary Lineker was the same.
Oh, yeah. I've seen videos of him when he first started.
And he said, Gary Lineker was the same, but guess what? He's earning over £1 million. So I took heart, and I really worked at it, and you know, I had a really good media career for almost 15 years, being on TV, and then I had my own radio show, which was amazing by itself, because that was one of my dreams, to have my own radio show on national radio, which eventually I got a chance, and it became really popular. And again, I made a name for myself with that, because I was not really a presenter. I was more of a football guy talking about football on radio, where somebody called in and we were just having a banter. And I was really blunt. I was really truthful. I was one of those that didn't really care, and I was always pushing the boundaries. I swear, every show that I was getting on, I was completely sure that the following week I'd get sacked. I was just waiting for the day the boss called and said, that's enough, like you guys. But it kept going and going and going. I did it for almost 2.5 seasons before we decided to move to Spain. So it was fun.
Do you miss it?
I do.
Yeah.
I really do. I think the radio part is because anyone who's been on radio will know it's very personal.
Yeah.
It's very personal, because you hear the voice, and it's amazing, because I get in a cab, even now when I go back to Singapore, and the guy go like, hey, Sasikumar, right? Sports talk, right? You know, so people listen to the show. I was one of them, and that's the part that I really miss. I really miss connecting with the audience, and they saw me as a voice. You know, football fans, everybody has an opinion.
Yeah.
And I became the guy that amplified their opinion. So, you know, that was a two-way communication. I miss it. Who knows, maybe in the future.
Well, open offer always on match day. To join any of the activities. I think Sean and I can learn a lot about you, because you have like an awesome presence on front of the camera.
Thank you.
And talking. So I think I wanted to get back to one point that you said, that it's so important on footballers right now. So you always have this image of success around you, right? But you mentioned about being depressed after stopping your career. And now people talk more openly about it, but
that's right.
Back then, how was it? Like,
yeah, you know, we talk about this with a lot of the older players that played in my era. We talk about mental health and depression, and we talk about it and go like, what was it for us back then? Nobody talked about this. There wasn't a label. There wasn't any help, and I feel bad for those people. And actually, to be honest, there's a lot of players that even now and then, players from now and then, they reach out to me and say, how do I deal with this? Like, how did you deal with it? So I try and be completely honest about it, and tell them that the only way you're going to get out of it is to have a plan, and you got to stick to a plan. Being a footballer, you have a lot of time. That's a lot of downtime. You train, and then you rest, and then you train, and that's all you know. You play on the weekend. So what happens is that it really takes a mental toll and leaves a huge gap when you don't have that. Do you know what I mean? So and when the worst happens, when a lot of your friends are still playing, winning, having the best times of their lives, and then you are left with really nothing to do, that really takes a big toll on a lot of players, and I feel sorry for them. But it's good that now they recognize it, but back then there was no help. You had to do it, and back then as well, there wasn't information, there wasn't help. So we see a lot of players coming forward. I mean, in the past, we've seen a lot of players go wayward, and we try and blame them for it, because a lot of the time it's judgment, right? Yeah. Oh, he had money, but he didn't do anything with it. He had fame, but he didn't do anything with it. But really, if you've not walked that path, you have no clue.
Yes.
I think I'm glad that right now there's a lot of help for players. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you retired when you were 29, which is maybe a bit younger than, you know, sometimes players try to sort of eke it out as much as they can till they're 34, 35 or anything. Did you, when you were feeling like you were after you'd left, did you ever think about going back, about trying to start again, or was it?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Yeah. I tell you why. Because I quit playing, and then I started working, and then I started coaching, and then when you start getting a little bit fitter, when you start playing again, And because you've taken that break, your brain kind of rewires itself. And all of a sudden you become this mature, very experienced person. And then you look at what's happening in the league, right? And you go like, I can still play. But the way I left football was a bit how should I say, it was not the best moment for me, because I had a 2-year contract and my contract got cancelled in the second year, not my own doing. There was a lot of problems within the club. I was the highest paid player, and the chairman said, we're not having the most expensive substitute on the bench, right? So here you go. So I had an obligation with the contract, and then it went into several arbitration. We'll not go into that, but I didn't want to end my career like that.
Yeah.
I really didn't want. I wanted to end it on my terms. So 6 months later, the transfer window opened, and the club that I used to play for, and I had a very successful time there, was an English coach by the name of Steve Darby, and he said, "Why don't you come back and play for us?" And when that door opened, I jumped at it.
Yeah.
Purely not because I wanted to come back. I wanted to end my career in my terms.
Yes.
Right. And when we went there, that team was really successful. I didn't play a huge role in that. I came in I was more like a senior guy filling in a role for different players. And that's what I did. And come end of the season, I said, okay, that's it. I'm retired. I moved to Australia. So there was closure to my football career. And I'm so grateful to Steve Darby, who was my coach back then, who gave me that opportunity. Because if I ended it on a different term, I'll still be very bitter about the game. And I think there was some closure there. So I'm, again, very blessed to have good people around me.
If it's okay to go back a bit retrospectively, could you tell us a bit more about your club career and like how you started out, and maybe when you sort of first got called up to the national team, just a bit of a look back kind of thing?
Yeah, so it's also another very interesting journey, because as a young kid, I actually didn't play football. I played football with the neighborhood boys and stuff like that, but my first love was field hockey.
Oh wow!
And I was actually kind of really good at it. And I got selected for the Singapore under-15 team.
Wow!
And I didn't get picked because I was growing. That was like I hit puberty and I was growing like man. I'm 6'4", right? And I was growing. And at that time, my family, I come from a very humble family, so really couldn't afford the long hockey stick.
Yeah.
Right? That was the time when they kind of had the XL version of the hockey stick. So I couldn't really afford it. And didn't make the team. I got culled, and at 15 years old, when you get dropped from a team, that your world ends, right?
Yeah.
But I felt that when that door closed, another window opened, which was football. Got involved with the schools team, and then I was part of the Singapore schoolboys team. Took my first flight ever at 15 to Bangkok for a tournament with that team. Didn't play too much, and I came back, and then I was kind of in the system, and I was doing really well, but I never really broke into senior football. But I was playing like under-19 football. There was a scout for the national team. He watched me playing in the under-19s, and I did really well at that level. And I was still part of the senior team, but was on the bench most of the time, squad player. Didn't. And then there was a letter that came to the club to say that I was called up for the second national team, trials for the second national team.
Yeah.
So there was another player, we almost had a similar name, but he was already playing in the first team. And the manager and everyone thought that it was him that was called up for the national team. So he went, and they said, no, it's not you. We won the big one, the centre back. So then I went. When I went into the dressing room, mind you, I'm 19 and I never played senior football. And all the players in that dressing room, they came from the national team, and they were all iconic stars back then. And those players who didn't get to play in the first team, they were literally the second team, right? So they came into that team. And I'm sitting in the dressing room and I'm looking around and saying, all these guys are stars, and I've never played one game of senior football. Eventually got selected, went to Indonesia for a tournament. I played really well. At that moment, the Malaysian striker was the best striker in Southeast Asia. I marked him out of the game, and I came back, and then I got picked for the Olympic squad, and I was already on the fringe of the national team then. So all of this happened in 3 years.
Wow.
That's why I say I'm an
rapid rise.
accidental footballer, because all of this happened in 3 years, and I suppose I peaked at the right time.
Yeah.
Right place, right time, and a lot of things happened for me. And then from there, I was, it's mandatory to serve national service in Singapore.
Okay.
So when I got drafted into national service, I played for the Singapore Armed Forces team, which was a big team back then. That's right about the time Singapore launched its first ever professional league called the S League. I played for them. I was the captain. And then halfway through the season, I was the first player in the league to be transferred to another team. I went to Geylang International, which was another big team. Spent 3 seasons there. Went to Home United. Actually won quite a few titles with Geylang United. Transferred to Home United, which was a new team, which was run by the police force. A lot of money behind it. Went there. First season, won the league. Won the cup the next 2 years. And then I went to France, actually. I went to France to have a trial in France. I wanted to play in Europe so badly. That was it. I wanted to play. When I got to Europe, I went to France. I went to a second division League 2 team called Wascal. I think they are like now in the 4th or 5th division. I was good enough, but a very greedy agent wanted a big transfer fee for a Singaporean boy in a club that was struggling for relegation. So didn't happen for me. Came back and then spent my entire career playing in Singapore. And then when I had an opportunity to move to Australia, I moved to Australia for work. But I also played in the state league team, one of the teams in Australia in Melbourne. I played with them, and that was it. So by 31, I was done with football, and then really focused in on my second career, which was my sports business. And I knew that with my background in football, and if I could take the same kind of determination and mindset into business, I'll find some success. I was wrong, right? So first 5 years, I was running around chasing my tail, but it's a different world. But I'm grateful for all the experiences I had, the highs and lows, not just in football, but also in business, because it put me in this chair today.
Yes, and we're very glad that it happened. Yeah, definitely. You're not the only talented footballer in your family, though, because you were telling me, and I'll tell the viewers, because this was a very funny story. You mentioned casually that your kids had training today, and I thought, well, they'll just be playing for fun, but then saw on your Twitter that they both in the academy at Atletico Madrid.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
It is. I think I try to keep it as low key as possible because in football it's a long journey. It's a very long journey, and if anybody knows about the long journey, it's me, right? And you don't want to get excited for the wrong reasons. But I must give credit to my boys, both of them. Kian is 12 and Tillen is 10. He's going to be 10 in July. They're talented boys because I had a certain methodology of training a kid, right? So I used my kids as guinea pigs, really, because I felt that there's a big argument in Asia, especially that Asian players, especially Arsenal players, can't make the grade in Europe. It's a common belief. The Japanese and the Koreans have kind of broke that ceiling, and now they are in big leagues around the world. But in Southeast Asia, we still have that kind of complex that, no, it's not for us. So I started thinking about it and putting my head to it, and God bless, I got 2 boys. And they started playing football, and I just wanted them to enjoy football. Let's just go out there and play. And thankfully, where we were living, there were like 30, 40 kids playing street soccer every day at 5 to 7. So my boys were there. From a very young age of 4 or 5 years old, they were playing with their friends. And as they grew into it, I saw them, they kind of did some stuff where I go like, they've got something about them. So one of the things that I did was I started putting little footballs around the house and started to gamify the whole thing. Put this in the basket, you get 1 point, that kind of stuff. So they started doing that. And what really happened is that they became really good with both legs.
Yes.
Right? They started kicking with left and right. And that continued. And I think when I paid a lot of attention to technique, I was all about technique and drilling them on technique. And back in Singapore, they were playing at the highest level. And when they kind of outgrew themselves in their own age group, they jumped to the next age group. They were playing with kids above them. And even there, they were pushing the boundaries. Yeah. We came to Europe and came to Madrid. And they were 1 day away from signing with the Rayo Vallecano when we had an opportunity to go to Atletico Madrid. Wow. And they went there, and thankfully Atletico Madrid saw, that the players, both the boys had something about them, and it's not easy for Asian boys, Asian boys to come here and compete with very talented Spanish boys, but they had something about them which obviously the coaches saw. And if you know Atletico Madrid, they have produced some really good players. Awesome. So when it comes to sporting talent, these guys are probably the best in the game, right? So there seems something about it. I think we've just started. We've only been here about 6 months now, and they're progressing really well. They're scoring a bunch of goals for the team. And now it's just to put their head down and work. I think my work has not finished yet. I think we're just starting. the truth be told is that I spend a lot of my time now making sure that I give my best to them.
Yes.
Because there will come a time where they don't want to know daddy and mommy anymore, right? Like all
I'm
of us.
sure.
No, but for now, they're doing really well, and I'm glad. Again, we are really blessed to be in a position, and I think they are really appreciative of the opportunity they have in front of them. So it's all up to them. I can only open the door.
I mean, you touched on it before, but I was just going to say again, like, how aware are they of your career and your, because I had this. If I'd scored the winning goal in an international tournament, I would never shut up about it. I would be telling everyone. But you were saying, I think that they kind of noticed it more through other people approaching you.
Yeah, I mean, the kids these days, they go on Google and they find out everything about everyone, right? So, I did a reality show as well. I did 2 seasons of reality show that was on TV. They enjoy watching that. They see me coaching. They listen to my radio show. They see clips of my football career. They see what I'm doing from the sports business side of it, and I'm pretty sure they'll be watching this stuff as well. So
hello,
they get really excited about such things. When I do things like that, they get really excited. So they understand that their dad is a footballer, and that surname, the family name, is a little bit heavy for them, especially back in Singapore. But I want them to chart their own careers.
Yes.
Because if you compare where they are now and where I was when I was 10 level, we are on a different planet altogether. Like I'm nowhere close to what they are capable of doing now or they're doing now. So it's good that we are away from Singapore, because over here, I'm literally, nobody knows me. And one of the things that my wife always says is that in Singapore, when you go to a football event, everybody wants to talk to you. Here, even the Sunday league coach doesn't want to talk to you, so which is great. Like being anonymous here, just being one of the parents here, really gives me a lot of satisfaction that we are purely here on merit and nothing else.
Yes.
So I think in that sense, it really works for them. So now they have to do the work. That's it.
That's awesome. Also, how cool is it for like 2 kids their age that maybe they make it, maybe they don't, but to enjoy something like this in a city like Madrid, that also like breathes football. You mentioned Rayo, Atletico, Real, I guess they play against each other's academy. It must be an awesome feeling for them.
No, I mean, I remind them of these moments that they will remember forever in their lives, because we all been there. When we are kids, we don't remember these moments. We go like, oh, it's a moment, we enjoy it, pass and go, right? Actually, to be honest, even me, right? When I look back at my career, and I think Michael Owen said this once, the medals really start to shine only when you finish playing. Right? Yeah. At the moment you're winning titles and stuff like that, it feels great. But only when you finish, when you're so away from the game and you go like, I did this, I won this. So I'm trying to explain to my kids, and they won't understand this, but 30, 40 years from now, they'll be telling their kids and their grandkids, I was actually a good Madrid player once. And that by itself, it's amazing, right? It's an amazing story, especially if you're coming from a young country like Singapore. But I mean, I'd be lying if I said I don't want them to go all the way. I want them to go all the way. I think they have all the tools to go all the way. Football is only 20% skills, 80% is here. And I know that really well. So I'm trying to make sure that they understand that they need to take really good care of themselves, not just from a skill perspective, but from a mental perspective. Because if I look at my own career, there were more downs than ups. But the ups were so high that it kind of, you don't even think about the lows, right? So that's what it is.
So you've been doing a lot since you retired, a lot. I looked on your Twitter profile, and there was a very long list of things you've been doing since then. What are you doing currently? Would you tell us a bit more about the kind of things you're working on?
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same business now. I'm in the sports business, especially football business. The tides have turned a little bit because I'm based in Europe. I've always wanted to work in European football. That's been my dream, right? We work in European football, be in the epicenter of football. Madrid is the epicenter of football. I've just concluded taking over a German football academy in a small town called Plauen, where it's really like a camp where we bring boys from around the world, players from around the world, we prepare them, and then we send them out on trials to German football. I learned, this is a trivia for you. Just make a wild guess. How many football clubs there are in German football system?
I think it's something crazy high, like 1,500 or something like that.
Nowhere close.
Way more than that.
Show what I
Like
know.
100,000.
You were close. 181,000 clubs.
Wow. Okay.
And in 9 divisions or something like that. And 37,000 grounds or something mad like that. So there's a level for any player, right? And then the higher you go, you get paid. And German football, even at the lower divisions, they are well resourced, well financed. The sponsorship is good, the fans are good, so they can play players. So our camp is basically our players come from all over the world. We prepare them. We have a methodology behind it, and then we place them in different clubs, depending on obviously your what you bring to the game, right? And your players are different levels. So I started with that. I'm going to try and replicate that in Spain as well, with Spanish players. So that's the project that I'm working on now. I'm also working with La Liga on a couple of projects. The whole idea for me is to now create a pathway. That's what I'm working on. A pathway where we work with the player from like my kids, from the age of 10, 11, and all the way when they finish their career. That's the pathway that I'm building. Currently, there's no such thing like that. There are some people doing different things, but very loose. But I'm passionate about bringing more Asian players into European football, right? And if you know Asian parents really well, they pay attention to academics. They want the kids to study. So now we've also got an outlet in the US where we're helping boys to get, and boys and girls, now to get a sports scholarship, a football scholarship in the US, right? So they start in one of our bases in Asia. They come to either Germany or Spain. And if they're good enough, they take the pro route. If they're not good enough, they go to America. So this is the pipeline we are building, and I'm super excited about it.
That sounds so good. It's also like you were mentioning that there is this like glass ceiling for Asian players to make it in Europe, and it sounds like you're contributing to smash it with this program you have.
I'm trying my best. I think at the end of the day, if the pathway is available, a lot of people will jump on it. Right now, if you are a parent with a very talented child sitting maybe in Jakarta or Singapore or even Thailand, you have no clue where to start, right? No clue. So with us, we are trying to say every step of the way, we want to hold your hands and say this is the path to take. And hopefully we create a good working relationship, because I had a really bad relationship with the football agent and the whole agency world. I hate being called an agent because it's a dirty word. There are good agents and there are very bad agents. And what we don't want to do is want to go into that. We want to make sure that we are impartial. We only give options, and which option the kids pick is up to them, right? And creating a sustainable business around it. So I'm excited about that. That's a very purposeful business for me. I think it's very purpose-driven. And along the way, we'll do different things like, looking at underprivileged kids from different backgrounds. And because let's be honest about it, football is an expensive sport these days. I mean, if you want to make the grade, your parents have to invest it, like I'm investing in my kids. Not everyone can actually afford it. If you look at big footballers in the world, they all come from very humble backgrounds. So if we can create an opportunity for those that want to contribute to that growth, and also those who are looking for that contribution. So we want to play the platform for that as well.
When you mentioned about obviously it's been a struggle for Asian players to make that transition in the past, do you think that lack of pathway is the main thing, like the key contributor, or is it more of like a cultural thing? Or because I think that from my perception is that a lot of focus and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a lot more focus on sort of like individual sports in that kind of area of the world, and maybe like the team sports don't get the same kind of focus.
Yeah, you're right. You're partially right when you say that, because it's easier for someone to be excelling in an individual sport, because what you put in is what you take out.
Yeah.
With a team environment, and if you look at the infrastructure, the culture in Asia, especially in Southeast Asia, take away Japan and Korea, even in China, they're struggling to try and build this football culture. Here in Spain, on a Saturday afternoon, if you go and have lunch, you see kids of different ability sizes. They're all wearing a football shirt. They've just finished playing, and they're having a meal with not just their mom and dad, their grandfather, grandmother, uncle, auntie. So what has happened is that they've all gone to watch the kid play, scream, enjoy themselves, and then gone for lunch. So it's become part of their culture. In Singapore or in Thailand or anywhere in Asia, that's not the case actually. The kid goes by himself or herself. plays the game, come back. Parents don't even ask, well, how did you do? So it's not culturally ingrained in society in that part of the world where it's important for a child to play sport. It's important for a child to play football, regardless of its ability, right? But regardless of the child's ability. Here, they have, 15 divisions maybe for the kids to at least play, participate and stuff like that. I think that is the big one. So if you can't replicate that, you got to bring them into this sort of environment early as well. And there are plenty of opportunities. I think kids can come here bored, to go to school here, get into the whole culture thing. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to create that because it will take a long time before we get to the level of Korea and Japan where sports is important for them. And you see what Son Heung-min is doing today.
Yes.
He's flying the flag for Korea because everyone in the world, besides of course BTS, the band, which is famous, is Son, right? So countries must not start to understand it's the soft approach, not so the hard approach anymore.
Do you think that, like, which you mentioned Son Heung-min there, but like sometimes when there is like this one player who everyone kind of rallies behind, that's sort of like a really important thing. Like I remember when I was younger, Hidetoshi Nakata for Japan, and like he kind of like, it seemed like he was single-handedly growing the interest. Do you think that's sort of what these kind of countries need, is something like that, who they can, like a national hero kind of thing?
Yeah, I think unfortunately in places like this, everybody looks for a hero, right? In many developing countries, especially when you look at Indonesia or Vietnam or those areas, they look for a hero, right? Everybody's looking for a hero where they can all pull towards, right? And that's how Japan started with their whole football project, where they were very measured the way they wanted to succeed in football. They wanted to export as many players as possible. If you look in any leagues in the world, there'll be one Japanese or a Korean there.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, at some point they'll be there. So this is a systematic way of the Japanese and the Koreans who have actually exported the players, and they know that when players go out, they come back with different skill sets. But what happens is that when they go out, the others look at it and go like, if he can play, I can too. It's happening with my kids as well. When two Singaporean boys are playing in Atletico de Madrid, now everybody thinks that, hey, we have a chance, right? Which is exactly what we want. When you look at the Singapore national team, it just can't be two of my boys. We need another 9 to play, right? And I keep saying that we need more players outside of Singapore in another environment, in another culture where football is priority. We need to be there.
So I was going to ask you touched on it a bit there, but what do you think of the state of football in Singapore and Southeast Asia at both sort of club and international level at the moment? Like, one of the questions I was going to ask you is, do you think Singapore qualifying for a World Cup in the near future, is that a realistic aim, or is it something that's going to take more time?
I'll talk about, the cultural side of it first.
Yeah, sure.
I think when I look at the teams that are qualified for the World Cup, what really takes to qualify for the World Cup? You have to be a footballing nation.
Yes.
Right? If you look at China, they did it one-off. It was a one-time qualification and they never qualified again.
And it was when Japan and Korea had already
qualified, right?
Yeah.
So they took the 2 spots and then they had a chance. It goes beyond just saying that I want, or having a good national team. It means that the entire community, the country, the society pulls towards saying that football is important for us. If you go to Brazil, Argentina, England, Spain, football is important for us.
Yes.
You switch on the TV or the radio, 24/7 they're talking about what happened, what's the shirt the guy wore, the boots, or he said this, he said that. It's purely because they leave no stones unturned when it comes to football. It's culture, it's a way of life. You sit at lunch, you talk about football. You go to dinner, you talk about football. So this is ingrained into people's way of life. So you have to take a side, you have to take a club, and that becomes part of my life. If I look at Southeast Asia, especially in Singapore, where economics and academics is more important than football, it's very hard to recreate that and say that, hey, we're going to go to the World Cup, because you're against teams, countries where this is the way of life for them. Even in Africa, it's happening, right? If you see Nigeria, Cameroon, it's a way of life for them. It's a way to get out of poverty and stuff like that. I don't see that happening in Singapore because the priorities are different. The expectations are different. Expectations of sportsmen or footballers are completely different. The only chance in Southeast Asia, I think, is Vietnam, Indonesia, because of sheer size of the population, and Thailand, where they kind of are having this sort of tribal feeling and connection for football. If you look at Thai football, it's amazing now. They get a lot of fans and stuff like that. So if you ask me to pick top 3 teams that might actually make the World Cup, Vietnam, Indonesia, and Thailand. Singapore has got a long way to go. Even though I actually sit on the executive committee of the Unleash the Raw, which is a project to revive and hopefully get Singapore into the World Cup. I'm an executive board member, but I want to be realistic because I'm a football guy first, right? And I want to be realistic, and unless and until we change the culture of what people think about football, it's not going to happen. We might be competitive in the region, that's all. And if that's enough, so be it.
So we've had like feedback sort of maybe on the other side that like from our fans, and I think you see it as well, like say when like a team like Manchester United or Barcelona goes to Southeast Asia, they just get mobbed. They are fans, it's like the Beatles. It's just like they're crazy for like these players. Do you think that the having that sort of focus on foreign leagues and maybe not so much on the local league, does that impact on the success of like the national team or like the domestic level?
Yeah, inevitably it does, because at the end of the day, as a fan, you're going to start comparing. Oh, they play like Barcelona, but you don't play like Barcelona. Oh, Manchester United, you're not as famous as Manchester United. So you can't blame fans for thinking like that. But if you go to England, you could be supporting maybe say Southampton, but you can also be a Manchester United fan.
Yes.
Because that's your local, right? It happens in Spain as well. You have a team from your own barrio, but you also support one of the teams, the bigger teams. So it is not that you can't support 2 teams. I go back to culture, because people, especially in Singapore or Southeast Asia, they don't have this trouble feeling towards their own community team, their own local team. They go like, they're not worth my time because I am a Manchester United fan. One of the things that happened, which was quite sickening to see a couple of years ago, is I think one of the big teams must be Arsenal or must be one of these big teams that actually played against Singapore national team. And we had more fans in the stadium wearing the opposition team than wearing our national team shirt. So when you look at that and you go like, that is the answer. That is the problem, because they don't feel attached to the team, the local team. They feel more affinity and they know more about Arsenal or Manchester United or Chelsea or Manchester City than they know about the local team. It was a little bit different before the internet era. It was a little bit different before the cable era, where I grew up watching one football match on a Sunday, road to Wembley. And that's how I became an Everton fan, because those days, Everton, Liverpool in the FA Cup, right?
I am a Liverpool fan, just to get that out of the way.
We shouldn't be sitting in the same.
Well, the only person we spoke to before was a Real Madrid fan. He's a Barcelona fan, so
there you go. So, but that is, I think, the crux of the whole challenge and issue, if you can put it that way. But fans today have different choices. They can choose what they want. You can't blame the fans. You just have to make your product better.
Yeah. You meant touched there on the local teams. Just like to say big up to Bath City and Terrassa, who are, if any of them are watching.
There you go.
So a bit more sort of on your career now, I was going to ask you about who was the best or most talented teammate you ever played alongside?
Interesting one. I played with a lot of talented players, but one of the guys that played alongside me, for a variety of reasons, didn't really reach his potential. But when he played at his best, he was just magical to watch. And I kind of see him in my younger son, because he plays exactly like him. His name is Gusta Guzarisha, unknown player, but he did make the national team with the Singapore national team. But what a player. Yeah. What a player. But along my career, I played with some really, really talented players. I played with 2 Iranian internationals who went to the World Cup.
Oh, wow.
I played with the Hungarian ex-international who was my captain. I played with Aussie internationals, Australian internationals who were amazing players. So I played with a lot of talented. But when I look at Gustavo as my teammate, and I felt that this boy could have played in Europe. Like he had everything to play in Europe. Like he would have been really good for the La Liga, right? But
which position did he play?
He was a centre midfielder, and unfortunately he had some issues with his habits outside the field. You know what I'm talking about. So, and he couldn't stay a straight line and didn't have the discipline to see and realize his full potential. But when he was on song, phenomenal player to watch.
Fantastic.
And similarly, who was your toughest opponent?
Yeah, the toughest opponent was Ali Dai, the Iranian striker. Just before he went to sign in Armenia Battlefield, I played against him with his Iranian team in Singapore. We played in a big tournament. He didn't score that night.
Nice, good job.
I marked him. He didn't score that night, but what a player! What a player! I mean, his header was like somebody was shooting. Physically strong, beast of a man. But I think I was 19 when I marked him. I was extremely fit when I was at 19. So I learned a lot from him, but I also know that he was on his way to the Bundesliga, and I was like just giving it to him. He was like, "Take it easy, boy. I'm going to the Bundesliga." But that was my moment, right?
Yeah.
That was my moment.
It's the only way to take it.
Yeah, that was my moment. But Ali Dai for me was amazing player.
And was there a contemporary, like one contemporary who was playing at the same time as you, who you ever thought, I would just love to play on the same team as him?
It did happen because one of the most famous players, Fandi Ahmad, who was like an iconic player in Singapore, I played against him, and then I played with him, and so he was one of those guys where I felt like this guy was, even at my best I couldn't mark him. I wish I was his teammate, right?
Yeah.
So we ended up being teammates at the club level and national team level afterwards.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Also,
do you want to take the?
Yes, of course. So first of all, when your kids make it, we're gonna make their match day cards for sure. Looking forward to that. But right now, so we are launching a new game that is called Squads. That you make like your starting 11 with your cards, and you play against someone else, someone else's starting 11. If you could make a start 11 right now from like current players, who would you choose? Starting from the keeper and...
Yeah, very good question. So I would actually go with goalkeeper Thibaut Courtois. I think he's probably one of the best goalkeepers in the world. At right back, I would go with Kai Walker.
Oh,
yeah,
a personal favorite as well.
Yeah. At left back, I'm going to be a little bit sentimental and choose Seamus Coleman from Everton, purely because I'm an Everton fan and he's been a solid captain. Two centre backs, I would like to go with. I really like the lead from Bayern Munich. I think he's a monster of a defender. And the other centre back for me will be Rudiger. Yeah. I think Rudiger is showing to be a really good signing for Real Madrid. My two flankers, I played this game with my kids all the time.
You're prepared for this.
It gets me thinking. I can't pronounce his name, but he plays for Napoli.
We had this problem earlier.
Yeah.
He asked me, how do we spell his name?
Kvara.
The Georgian guy.
the Georgian Maradona. Yeah, so
they'll know who you mean.
Yeah, exactly. If you don't know, you must be hiding somewhere else.
We would try to Google it, but it's difficult.
So he would be on my I would say left wing because he creates havoc, and then on the right it's a bit of a dicey one. I think I might go with Riyad Mahrez. Funny enough, because I think if he plays and he cuts in, then he creates havoc around there. So two centre midfield. I would love to say Toni Kroos and Kevin De Bruyne.
Not
right?
bad.
I think that's a really good balance in there. Even though I thought Casemiro has been really good of late, but I'm going to stick with those two. Toni Kroos and Kevin De Bruyne. You have to choose Haaland up front. You have to.
Especially this week.
You have to choose. And the other one is Karim Benzema.
Nice. That team would do some serious damage.
Yeah, I also feel like Benzema and Haaland would really sing together.
I mean, I'm a centre back. I don't want to play like I will call in sick the day before Haaland and Benzema. I mean, you got a young guy, strong as hell, and you got that old player who's extremely talented. I don't know if you guys watched last night with Real Madrid Liverpool.
Very sadly we did.
Yeah. So he's a minute, and that's my team.
That's a very good team.
Actually, also something we have at Matchday with our cards is that we have the common cards, but then we have some limited cards that when we are developing games, they will get specific boosts or specific advantages. So we have three. Basically, we have a lot of different varieties, but the three ones that are more common are limited, rare, and legendary. Limited being the not so exclusive one, rare the second one, and legendary they're just unique after that. So if you could boost from these 11 players, one to be the limited player, one to be the rare player, one to be the legendary player.
Yeah, I think it's quite obvious, right? You got to go with Cristiano or Messi as well. Those two are like maybe limited. I'll go for Cristiano.
Okay.
Rare, I'll go for Messi. And then I really love this player, and he might be my rare. Is that the rare?
Legendary,
right? It'd be Eric Cantona.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say Seamus Coleman.
No,
What are you doing, man?
No, Eric Cantona.
Iconic.
That's a good shout.
Iconic.
Yeah.
Iconic.
Yes.
I mean,
With the collar up.
I mean, I watched Manchester United just for Eric Cantona. I wasn't a fan, but I loved watching him play.
Sounds awesome. Yeah, we
Some
should
very
look
good
into
choices there.
Yeah,
This has
yeah,
been
yeah,
like,
yeah.
you know what you're doing. And then I think with the last one, we're just going to say, you have kids. Do you, and maybe this would make it more likely, are you a video game fan? Do you play video games at all?
No,
It's no problem if not, doesn't it?
Unfortunately, I don't have the time to sit in front.
Yes, that makes sense.
Actually, the problem is I'm very impatient. I can't sit still and do something for a long time. I need to be on the move, so I don't play video games. But my boys do.
Yeah.
They play FIFA and all that stuff. So I watch them for maybe 3 minutes and I walk away.
Yeah. Well, Matchday Squads game takes just 2 minutes. So if you're ever bored,
Now that I'm on your show.
Yeah. Now we've forced you to say it on camera.
I will. Yeah.
Well, I think that's everything we had to talk to you about. But I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to us. It was really interesting to hear about your career, and I hope it's not too gushing to say this, but for somebody who describes themselves as an accidental footballer, it sounds like you had a pretty incredible career. And like extremely humble guy. Like I said, if I had scored that winning goal, I would have it tattooed on my arm. You would not hear the end of it. Exactly, yeah.
No, thank you for having me. It was a real pleasure. I haven't done one of these interviews in a long time, and I miss being in front of cameras, talking to guys and sharing my journey. And you're right, I had a very interesting and a very colorful football career and posted as well. But I think one of the biggest things to do is to be able to let people tell your story rather than you tell your story.
Yes,
I think I'm the kind of guy that I enjoy people telling my story rather than me sharing it. And I hope that, if I can give one takeaway, I always say this: if I can make it, anyone can. So
we can do this. No, I just want to say thank you so much. Apart from me, little asterisk, but not sure. No, we just want to say, and like you said, when you mentioned about being back on camera, if you ever want to come back, you're always welcome. Sure. Always welcome. Yeah. It was great having you here. Thank you so much for that. Thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed watching, and keep an eye out for more of these in the future. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.